The cars are on track at one of the world's most beautiful and difficult road racing circuits as the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course plays host to round 13 of the PPG Kart World Series. Mid-Ohio presents a variety of unique challenges to the world's fastest road racers. Let's explore them now, beginning with former champion Danny Sullivan.
In my opinion, Mid-Ohio is the most physically demanding track there is on a driver. This place is tight, it's narrow, it's twisty, there's ups, there's downs, lefts and right. It's very tough. And with the tightness of the field and the tightness of this track, passing is at a premium. You have to be very, very aggressive. You might not win the endearment of the other drivers, but you might just win yourself a race. Gary?
Well, Danny, with all of those numerous elevation changes and 13 turns, all of the drivers agree. This track is as technically demanding as any they run on. You simply don't get a chance to relax. Now, to get the utmost out of your car, you have got to trust your own skills and your machine over terrain where the sight lines are often limited. It's a great challenge. It can be a lot of fun, provided you don't make a mistake or you encounter another driver who has. Jack?
Well, Gary, the traditional finish line is over behind that bridge, but we are a mile away at the starting line at Mid-Ohio. It's over a mile up through a straightaway, around what they call the keyhole, and right down in this area. Why? So that all the cars can be 2 by 2 and side by side. Jim Swindoll is the chief starter for Kart. What do you look for at this start?
Well, we're going to be looking for some restraint coming out of the keyhole there because of this long straightaway, about halfway between them and me. Mr. Herta is going to get on the gas. Mr. Zanardi is going to follow him as close as possible. They get to the line either side by side or in grid order.
Bob?
In the end, what it's all about is the championship, the PPG Cup, and $1 million bonus. With 5 races remaining, just 24 points cover the top 4 men in the standings. Alex Zanardi, Paul Tracy, Gilles de Ferran, and Michael Andretti. And if Greg Moore and Scott Pruitt can win a race, they'll be back in the thick of it, and they've won 3 times this year between them. But Mid-Ohio is not a track that gives up a victory easily. In the last 10 races here, we've had a yellow flag on the first lap 7 times. It's a puzzle to be solved, and the time to solve it is now. Brian Herta, the pole sitter, warms tires and engines in anticipation of the start. Let's check the starting grid for the Miller 200. Herta on the pole 8 times in the last 15 races. This race has been won from the pole. He's alongside Alex Zanardi, the defending champion at Mid-Ohio and the points leader. Row 2 will be Greg Moore, the Canadian fastest in the morning warm-up. And Gilles de Ferran, though he's yet to win, he's been on the podium in 5 of the last 7 races. Row 3 will be Dario Franchitti, fastest of 7 drivers making their first start at Mid-Ohio, and Mauricio Gugelmin, whose first career start came here 4 years ago. On row 4, a pair of Fords. Scott Pruitt, the fastest Ford Firestone combination, and Christian Fittipaldi in a Swift Ford. Row 5 will be Jimmy Vasser, the reigning champion, second fastest in the morning warm-up, and a back-to-back winner at Mid-Ohio, Michael Andretti. Row 6 will be Raul Boisel, who finished a close 3rd on the natural road course at Portland this year, and Parker Johnstone. Row 7 will be Mark Blundell, 3rd fastest in the morning warm-up, and Michel Jourdain Jr., his highest starting position ever. Row 8 will be Paul Tracy, who has finished 2nd here 3 times, and Bobby Rahal, who has won twice. Row 9 will be Andre Ribeiro and Al Unser Jr., also a 2-time winner here at Mid-Ohio. Row 10 will be Walter Salas, who had his best career finish 2 weeks ago at Michigan, and P.J. Jones, the fastest Toyota. On row 11 will be Adrian Fernandez and Richie Hearn. On row 12, Patrick Carpentier and Max Pappas, who made his first start here at Mid-Ohio 1 year ago. Row 13 will be Juan Fangio. His first career start came here 2 years ago. And Charlie Nierberg, whose car was pushed off of the starting grid, and he has climbed out. Row 14 will be Arndt Meyer, the young German, and another driver who had his best finish 2 weeks ago at Michigan, and Hiro Matsushita. Our race analysis, a 2¼ mile permanent road course, 83 laps of racing scheduled. Alex Zanardi, the defending champ. We expect pit stops to start on laps 27 through 30. Our stories, the championship stretch run. 4 drivers covered by 24 points. Tire wear, very much a concern, and track position is everything here at Mid-Ohio. Now let's get to Jack Arute.
Bob, this will be the longest section of track without a pace car in PPG Kart Series time. Brian Herta will bring them down as you watch the starter. Jim Swindoll has a traditional method of getting into the start. As the cars get to the top of the hill and the keyhole area, he'll begin to talk them through. And I'll tell you what, we're just going to listen in. The next voice you hear will be the starters.
Okay, let's see what we can do here. Pairing up good. Pairing up good. Be patient. Be patient. Be patient. Be patient. Okay, let's go. Let's go. Let's get going. Let's get going. That's a good one.
The green flag waves. We are underway. You're on board with Dario Franchitti from the number 5 starting spot. One of 5 blind brows on this racetrack. Here comes another. Herta leading Zanardi, then Greg Moore. Another brow onto one of the faster parts of the racetrack. And Patrick Carpentier has already spun. But it's in the nature of permanent road circuits that you can spin and not hit anything, hopefully to get back into the race undamaged. The start-finish straightaway. There is the finish tower on the left. That's where the checkered flag will wave. And Paul Tracy is in the pits on lap 1.
There is not the way you want to start off with you being second in the championship.
Bryan Herta at top speed in excess of 190 miles an hour. There is Zanardi and the battle for third. The blue cars. Greg Moore on the left. Gilles de Ferran on the right, and Dario Franchitti right in there as well.
Bryan Herta, of course, is getting what he wanted at the start, was a clean start, be able to get away and be able to dictate the pace, which he was so anxious to have.
Paul Tracy is getting out of the car, broken front wing and some problems.
Let me interrupt you, Gary. We're on a replay of Michael Andretti's view of a portion of the early part of this race. Oh, and contact.
And that's Michael that got tapped there and got spun around.
It appears he got hit at the right rear.
And then you saw just to the right of your screen, Patrick Carpentier spinning off there. Was probably an aftermath of Michael Andretti.
And the number 2 man in the championship, Paul Tracy, appears to be out of the race.
Well, here's Paul Tracy coming to us, Bob. Paul, what was the problem and where did the contact come from?
Over in the back, Michael and somebody got together and spun in front of a group. It was myself and I think Pruitt and Parker, and I just got caught up with nowhere to go and ran into the back of Parker when Michael spun in front of everybody and just bent the suspension. We can't fix it.
We talked in the pregame show about this championship situation. This has got to be crushing, I would think.
It really is. I mean, it's you know, when you're stuck back there in 15th, I mean, that's where all the crap really happens, and you know, you can't help it when somebody spins out in front of you and you have nowhere to go.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Paul Tracy led the championship, Danny, for 7 races before losing it 2 weeks ago in Michigan to that man, Alex Zanardi.
And sorry, Bob, that just adds to what we've said. Track position is so critical. Qualifying is so important here. You've got to be up at the front. Otherwise, you get there in the back, something happens. You have that accordion effect, and he's out of the race, and it wasn't really his fault.
Headed for the keyhole at top speed with Dario Franchitti, who lost an engine in the morning warm-up. From our Honda Helicam, looking down, Gilles de Ferran on the right, Franchitti on the left. They run 4th and 5th. Into the braking zone for turn 3. You see those concrete patches on the corners.
And just in front of them is Greg Moore, who we saw Gilles de Ferran making an attempt to pass just a minute ago. And I would imagine that he's probably turned his mixture down a little bit and backed off, trying to conserve some fuel.
We expect 2 stops over the course of the race, but yellow flags could change everything. There's the running order. Bryan Herta up front and a long way to go. We'll be back with more from Mid-Ohio. Back at Mid-Ohio, you can access complete coverage of the PPG Kart World Series, including the latest news, notes, and results. Check out ABC Sports Racing Area on America Online. The keyword, ABC Sports. Ride with Alex Zanardi in second place. Race leader Bryan Herta just ahead in the black and white shell car. this is how the battle has changed as Zanardi draws in.
Bob Brian Herta said early on that he wanted to dictate the pace. The pace he's dictating right now, I don't think is enough. He's got to stretch that out a little bit and get a comfortable cushion. At that position right there, he makes one little mistake, miss the gear, Zanardi's by. He's going to have to turn the wick up a little bit, drive it a little bit harder to pull away from Zanardi right now.
Danny, I think part of that is dictated by pit strategy, because on the radio they're telling him nice and easy, nice and easy. And remember, they're concerned about tire wear. He doesn't want to make radical moves.
Mark Blundell has obvious rear end damage
and a punctured left rear tire. You see that left rear tire is down.
And there's Al Unser Jr. Reportedly, Unser Jr. and Blundell got together. You saw Adrian Fernandez drive by. He's on a drive-through penalty for passing before the green flag at the beginning of the race. Unser Jr. back out. 60-mile-an-hour pit lane speed limit. See the average speed for the last lap at the upper left of your screen. Al Unser Jr. continuing to search for some light at the end of a long tunnel for Penske Racing. His teammate Paul Tracy is out of the race. There is the collision. Oh, and that could have been a lot worse with Andre Ribeiro, the bright yellow nose, just coming by, and Walter Salas in the white car just behind. There is Blundell.
And it looked like what we saw there was it looked like Al Unser Jr. actually drove over the right side of his car. Now, I don't know who did it first, but I mean, you saw his car up in the air.
Danny, we just got here and Blundell's car pulled in, and there's tire marks all over that rear fin right behind the pop-off valve. I think that's exactly what happened.
Mark Blundell comes into this weekend 8th in points, and he has scored more points in the last 3 races than any other driver.
Boy, if he got his tire all the way up into there, we're lucky that it isn't a more serious incident than what we just saw.
I think there's a lot of damage back there around that rear wing stanchion, and I don't know if they're going to even be able to get it off to replace it and put another one on. In fact, they're starting to disconnect now. Blundell's day at Mid-Ohio is now over.
What a shame. Up front, Brian Herta, Alex Zanardi, and now Greg Moore getting into this fight. The first race Brian Herta has led since the Rio 400. There you see the segment speeds through the 4 segments of the racetrack. We're measuring electronically. You can compare the speeds, and Zanardi noticeably quicker in 2nd place.
Well, he's noticeably quicker in the first segment. In the second one, Brian's a little bit quicker than Zanardi. But remember one thing, you can be as fast as you want. If you're stuck behind that guy, it doesn't matter. You still have to find a way around that car in front of you. But it does keep the pressure on Brian Herta. What he's trying to do here about driving conservatively, you want to keep those rear tires underneath you. You've got so many slow corners. If you wheel spin them off or use them up, as your fuel load lightens, the car will go loose, and you won't have any tires to be very racy at the end of that fuel load.
Mark Blundell is out of the car. Gary Gerould is there.
Mark Blundell, no luck whatsoever. Did you see any of that coming up from behind in your mirrors?
Well, yeah, unfortunately for us, we had a little bit of a problem under power, and the engine just sort of cut out, or something was making the power get reduced. And it was unfortunate. I think Al just went into the back of us. With, no fault of his. We just broke down under power, under load.
And looking over here on the rear of the car, they quickly just dumped a lot of water. Several buckets came over the wall. Apparently some body work back there around the left rear was very hot, but they've got it under control. Glad you're all right, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tough break for the Motorola and Pac West team. Whoa, Alex Zanardi getting those right side wheels up on the curb, exiting turn 1.
Well, Alex is trying to get by him. He's trying to show him that he's going to come up the inside there. He's taking a look. But what he's really trying to do is force a mistake there. He's got to be careful, though, because he can't leave the door open for Greg Moore. With all the action that's going on in the back of the field, with all these guys dropping out, we have a tremendous race for the lead.
Consider Greg Moore, 3rd in the line there. No points in the last 3 races for the young Canadian Charger, who many people thought was championship material this year. Perhaps the bitterest pill 2 weeks ago on the Superspeedway at Michigan in the US 500. Just a handful of laps into the race in which he was a contender. His day was over with a mechanical breakdown. Now you see the gaps to the leader in the upper left of your screen with 74 laps to go. And the running order, Michael Andretti back in 15th. He's been struggling this weekend. Now let's check the margin at the line. As each car crosses the finish line, the driver's name will pop up on the screen. And the top three are that close together. And a bigger gap, almost 3 full seconds to Gilles de Ferran in 4th. Dario Franchitti almost another second behind him. Bobby Rahal back there in 12th.
We need to keep an eye on that, because typically what happens when you get 3 guys battling at the front like that, their pace can sometimes be a little slower because they're trying to protect their line. You see Alex Zanardi taking a look down the inside. 2 things there. He's protecting his position from Greg Moore, and he's showing Bryan Herta that he's still there taking a look. But as those guys battle, it allows Gilles de Ferran and Dario Franchitti to gradually move up on him.
If you like numbers, you have your pick between the 2 front row starters. Bryan Herta, as we mentioned, pole sitters have won this race 8 out of the 15 times it has been run. Working for Zanardi is the fact that 4 men have won back-to-back races here at Mid-Ohio. Bobby Rahal did it back in the 80s. Emerson Fittipaldi, Michael Andretti, and Al Unser Jr. in the 90s. And Zanardi is the defending champion here at the Miller 200.
This spot right here is one of the 2 good safe spots, if there are any on this track, to pass, because you come up a long straightaway. The next spot is the one at the end of this long straightaway into the tight spot. Those are the 2 safest spots that you can pass.
A great spectator track. Look at where the fences are. And the motorhomes pulled right up to the edge of the guardrail virtually, giving an unparalleled view of the racing. Berms on either side of some of the slower corners. A great place to watch the PPG Kart World Series. These drivers were pilots. They would say you are never straight and level at Mid-Ohio. Through the Veil and then uphill. Strong left-hander, then back to the right, diving down into the carousel.
And I can tell you from experience, this is a physically very, very tough spot to drive. And when you've got somebody like Alex Zanardi and Greg Moore right behind you, he's going to earn his money today.
Danny, we're getting a quick word from the pits here that tire concern is what is the problem right now for Bryan Herta. He's telling the crew on the radio he thinks the total effectiveness, maybe not the total effectiveness, but the primary effectiveness of the tires is gone at this point.
No driver has ever scored his first career win at Mid-Ohio. Can Bryan Herta do it? He's got a long afternoon of work ahead of him. We'll be back. High over Mid-Ohio today is what a blimp turns into at Miller time. The Miller Eagle. The Miller Eagle is the first airplane designed to be an eye in the sky on sports television. And it's been giving us some terrific shots today. Although I'm not sure I'd like to spend the whole day in that position. To Gary Gerould in the pit lane.
Bob, let's update the Al Unser Jr. situation. Remember, he was involved in that contact that eliminated Mark Blundell. He brought the car in. They changed all 4 tires. They checked all the suspension. Everything looked good. They promptly sent him back out. Al was wondering what went wrong, why Blundell slowed. He, of course, told us it was engine related. As for Bryan Herta, meanwhile, he's reporting some push now. We talked about the tires, the fact that he's on the softer primary compound for Goodyear. I'm sorry, the softer option tire. They have primaries, the harder, more durable compound on the wall. The question is, when does that first pit stop come, and will they make that change at that time? Let's go to Jack.
Gary, under normal circumstances, Chip Ganassi is chattering all the time, back and forth with his driver, Alex Zanardi. That is not the case today. The only transmission that has taken place since the drop of the green flag on the radio was when Paul Tracy dropped out of this race. The one thing that Ganassi said to his driver is, Tracy is out. There was no confirmation from Zanardi. He continues to run second, but Bob Varsha, points are important. It could be that Zanardi's running for points today now that his chief competitors, Tracy, is behind the wall.
Good thought, Jack. Now here's a look at the last lap for Bryan Herta. And you see the segment times. Those are in the white, and the average speeds at the speed traps, fastest part of the racetrack, at the end of the kink back straightaway at 189 miles an hour on that last lap. And keep in mind, the fuel load is still lightning. On the other hand, the tires are wearing. Ooh, Alex Zanardi got a twitch there.
Right, and we're going to see them. They're going down into this place right at about 190 miles an hour. Right in here, those are the 4, 3, 2, 1. They go in there very deep on the braking. Up over this hill, down into a very important section. Want to get out of here smooth. Now up over this tricky left, right down there, very fast. Slide it out there a little bit. Now back over the hill. You got to be careful not to get it sideways there. Big Mo crashed a car in qualifying right at that spot yesterday.
Had the pleasure of taking a lap of Mid-Ohio with Chief Steward Wally Dallenbach in one of the PPG pace cars. It's not often you see old Wally smiling, but he had a driver's grin as he drove this racetrack. It is magic. Now back with Michael Andretti as he comes over one of those blind brows we were talking about. Here comes another. Andretti shown back in 15th place.
On this shot, you can see over that brow, but from where Michael's looking, when you go up to that brow, you cannot see the other side or even part of the road that drops off on the other side.
Good view there of the rise and fall of the pit straightaway. More of the same here on the run down, or up in this case, to the keyhole. Let's go on board with Bobby Rahal, and I would guess this is a much more authentic look at what the driver sees.
This is a lot more what the driver sees. See how it's blind there? Can't see where he's going. Now this is going to be tricky right here. You'll see this come out of this corner. He accelerates up over. See how blind it is right there? Back in comes a little light on there. Now look at this one. Can't see where you're going. Up over the other side. You just have to trust that they didn't take the road away from the last lap that you were there.
Danny, the crew is telling Bobby Rahal that on his last 2 laps that he was faster than anybody in front of him. He's on that hard Goodyear tire, and you're wondering if that's starting to come into play now.
Look at Brian. Brian Herta's tire has shredded. His left rear is completely gone. It's beating the bodywork. See the little wing?
And he could not be farther from the pit entrance.
That is a huge blow. His day is run. He'll creep around, but with the way see that flap, just how it's coming over there, the tire, that's just beating the car up. You saw it beat the wing off. He knows he's got a problem. He's off.
The tire engineers call that delamination.
And delamination is followed by dejection here on pit road, as the crew has just seen the replay.
Oh, a massive tire down, much like what we saw with Michael Andretti at Long Beach earlier this year.
Very much so, but that thing just came apart. Luckily, great control by Brian. See it beating the wing right there in front of him.
Now from Alex Zanardi's onboard camera, straight ahead is Herta.
Oh, and he's look at all the rubber come up on the lens there.
And now from overhead, Herta in black and white. A beautiful driving job by Brian Herta. At 27 years of age, one of the young wave of PPG Kart World Series stars. In fact, the men behind him, Alex Zanardi, the new leader, is just 30 years of age. Greg Moore, just 22. There is Brian Herta's team. How many times Bobby Rahal's team has been to the brink this year? Recall running out of fuel with a lap to go at the Rio 400. And now Alex Zanardi. Herta's misfortune is Zanardi's good fortune. And we have a full course caution. Twin yellow flags from the flag stand. Just before that incident involving Brian Herta, P.J. Jones pitted his car for new rear tires. He too is on Goodyears. Zanardi pits from the race lead.
Full course yellow, they're going to take advantage of it.
Greg Moore also in from second. Gilles de Ferran in as well. Jackaroo.
And guys, Alex Zanardi almost missed his pit. You know, Zanardi historically has had a little bit of difficulty finding his pit position. They are in an uphill area. They've changed 4 tires in 9.6 seconds. He's away and almost collects the 20 car, and that would be Raul Boesel. pit road. Gilles de Ferran has spun as he almost got collected with the 99 car. That would be Greg Moore. And now de Ferran, who was running in third at the time, is spun and stalled at the end of pit road.
De Ferran pits very far down the pit road toward the exit. That allows the driver to get on the power quickly and stay under that 60-mile-an-hour speed limit before he reaches the blend line.
Bob, let me tell you exactly how that happened. What happens on this pit road is it's wide, but it still has its narrowing tendencies at the end of pit road. Track position is so important here that all of the drivers know they must get in and then get back out as quickly as possible. Not to the end of pit road, but to get out in front of other cars. That's what happened to Gilles de Ferran. He tried to beat out Greg Moore, saw Moore in the mirror at the last minute, and had to spin the car to avoid collecting Moore, who was already up at 55 miles an hour, exiting the pits.
Another dramatic twist, this time involving Gilles de Ferran. We'll step away and be back to Mid-Ohio after this message and a word from our ABC stations. Tonight on ABC, Mel Harris stars in the Sunday night movie Desperate Journey, the Allison Wilcox story. It all happens after Second Noah and America's Funniest Home Videos tonight here on ABC. Here at Mid-Ohio, there is Bryan Herta. He's a part of Bobby Rahall's team. He resides in New Albany, Ohio, about an hour south of the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. Making that long walk back, he'll have the opportunity to commiserate with the fans after a left rear tire exploded and dropped the race leader out of the event. I mentioned that the fans can get very close to the racing surface. Now you're on board with Alex Zanardi as we await the restart. Or excuse me, Jimmy Vasser's car. Jimmy had a long pit stop. We'll have more on that in just a moment. There is Bobby Rahal. Mid-Ohio could be considered a home track for Rahal, who lives, as I mentioned, about an hour south. At age 44, Bobby is the oldest driver on the circuit and the only driver owner in the series. The three-time PPG Cup champion holds the record for all-time kart career starts with 241, but hasn't won in 77 starts. This season, he's been so close to ending that losing streak. As an owner, he's starting to look to the future. 1997 has been an emotional year for the man behind Team Rahal. There was the heartbreak of Rio, where Bobby ran out of fuel one lap from his first victory since 1992. Disaster struck again in Michigan, where he tagged the wall while leading. But even if he doesn't win again before climbing out of the car for the last time, Rahal is comfortable with the idea of retirement.
I never looked at my being a driver as being the end. Motor racing's been my life, and I'm not going to race till I'm 50 years old or 55. In fact, I think my retirement is on the horizon.
Rahal is vague about the exact date of his retirement for one simple reason. When he does stop, he wants to be sure he has driving completely out of his system.
All too often drivers retire and then they get frustrated and they come back, or there's nothing for them. They haven't prepared themselves, and so the only thing they know is to drive, and then they end up looking worse in the end than if they just stopped it. So that's one issue. Another issue is I have to do what's right for this team, because this team is more important than any one individual, and that includes Bobby Rahal, the driver. You know, I have to do what's right for me, but what's right for all the people in this team. So my retirement date's based on all these factors, and it's coming, but exactly when I can't tell you.
We are back under green, with darkening skies overhead and a strong threat of rain here today at Mid-Ohio. There is Christian Fittipaldi. Bobby Rahal on that long pit stop sequence moved up to 7th place. A look back from Dario Franchitti's car. That is Christian. Coming up behind Fittipaldi is Scott Pruitt, and then Rahal. A look forward. Franchitti just ahead of him Greg Moore, Alex Zanardi, and Mauricio Gugelmin, who did not stop under the yellow flag.
had a problem, you know, you alluded to with Jimmy Vasser. Well, let's update you. The problem was the center lug. The wheel nut got jammed as they changed tires. It took them all of 40 seconds to just dislodge that wheel nut. They did make the tire change, but thank goodness that pit stop was under caution, or it would have been disaster for Jimmy Vasser.
Thanks, Jack. There is Greg Moore looking for his first points in 4 races. The order is Gugelmin, Zanardi, Moore, Franchitti, Fittipaldi, Pruitt, Rahal, Poisel. Michel Jourdain Jr. has come from 14th at the start all the way to 9th, and Andre Ribeiro runs 10th. The ride with Dario Franchitti. This is the keyhole turn.
Leading on to the longest straightaway. And of course, the best opportunity pass has a little kink right there in the middle.
Passing B.J. Jones.
That speed, it feels a little bit like a corner too, but it's a place you can go through there side by side.
Now here's our fuel window examination. You see Mauricio Gugelmin did not stop under the yellow flag. That's the little yellow mark over laps 20, 21, 22. Alex Zanardi, Greg Moore, and Dario Franchitti behind him did stop and then ran 3 laps under yellow before we went green. They've had 2 green flag laps, and thus they have a long way before they hit their pit window. Bryan Herta has finally finished that long walk back to the pits. Gary is with him.
Brian, such a long walk and such disappointment. Did you have any indication that tire wear was going to lead to what happened there with that virtual explosion of the tire?
No, not at all. And to be fair, I'm not really sure it was a tire wear related problem. It could have been a puncture or something like that. You know, there's a lot of focus on the tire wear going into the race, and I have to say that my Goodyear tires were holding up really well for me. I mean, much better than expected even, and this is just an unfortunate thing. I think we probably got a puncture or something. There's nothing you can do about it.
How big a gamble did you think you were taking by sticking with that when the boss man and your teammate was staying on the tire?
Well, like I said, I didn't think it was that big a gamble, and without seeing the data, I don't know exactly what happened, but obviously
big disappointment. And we've got a little audio problem down here. Thank you, Brian.
Bobby Rahal trailing Scott Pruitt. 6th and 7th. Christian Fittipaldi just ahead. There are the numbers on Bobby's march through the field. A 2-time winner at this racetrack in consecutive years. A man who was a pretty safe bet to win at Mid-Ohio just about any time out. I remember him in the sports car years, coming out and winning in Porsche GTP cars. The old International Race of Champions used to come here to Mid-Ohio, and your money was on Rahal. Coming up after our broadcast from here at Mid-Ohio at 5 o'clock Eastern Time, you can catch the 4th and final race of the International Race of Champions for 1997. The numbers on the battle: Pruitt and Rahal. Bobby Rahal spent the week after the US 500 playing 5 legendary golf courses in Scotland on 5 consecutive days. Now, if you watch the US 500, you know he crashed out of that race while leading, so he was a bit sore after that transoceanic flight to start playing golf every single day in Scotland. Says Bobby, he loved every minute of it.
And I'm sure he played that to the hilt and tried to get strokes from his playing partner because of that bruised hip.
Look at that ultra fast turn 1. Two Ford-powered cars, both Reynards. Firestone tires on Pruitt's car, Goodyear's on Rahal's. Rocketing down the backstretch up to 190 miles an hour, then hard on the brakes, deep into the braking zone. And climbing uphill to the left and diving down. 5 races remain in the 1997 championship, 3 of them on permanent road courses. Today at Mid-Ohio, next week at Road America in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, and then Laguna Seca in September. The street circuit at Vancouver and the super speedway at Fontana, California. The only other circuits we'll see. Mauricio Gugelmin is now in Jackaroo.
And Bobby hit his marks exactly. They're going to take a full tank of fuel, so they've got plenty of time to change all 4 tires. It will take longer for the fuel. You notice they drop the jack before the fueling is completed. Then Gugelmin can engage the clutch in 13.7, but he was slow by about 0.2 of a second getting back on the throttle.
His teammate Mark Blundell has won races this year, but Blundell has crashed out of the race. It's up to Mauricio Gugelmin to wave the flag for the Pac West team. We'll take a break and return for more of the Miller 200. Stay with us. Back live at Mid-Ohio, you ride on the nose of Gilles de Ferran's Reynard with Honda power and Goodyear tires. Recall he spun at the end of the pit lane at his first stop. He now runs in 14th position. Make that 13th. He has just gotten around Parker Johnstone for that spot. You can see just what a challenge it is to get a grip around Mid-Ohio.
And 2 other drivers who've had troubles early on, Michael Andretti and Al Unser Jr., who dropped way back with a spin and an early pit stop, are the next guys in front of Gilles de Ferran. You see Michael there in the black car, Al Jr. right there in the red and white, and the blue and white car of Gilles de Ferran.
Parker Johnstone and Jimmy Vasser. That is for position 14th and 15th. Down to Gary Gerould.
Steve Myers represents Goodyear, and Steve, what we're trying to do is follow up apparently a little mystery. Brian Herta's crew reporting that they thought the effectiveness of his tires was gone. Then we saw the delamination on that rear that put him out of the race. Have you been able to learn anything, or can you tell us anything about what may have happened?
We're looking at the rear right now. We assume it was some type of puncture. We haven't seen any kind of problems with any of the rears, throughout the weekend, so we assume it's probably some type of debris, but as soon as we get the tire back, we'll have a chance to take a closer look at it and determine exactly what happened. But at this point in time, we assume it was some type of puncture.
Any problems in delamination of tires for your company and your drivers this weekend?
We're seeing a little bit of tearing on the front tires, which we're noticing during a normal pit stop. Doesn't appear that it's affected their normal routine as far as when they would have normally stopped. So we're monitoring that very closely, obviously, during the race. And a lot of the teams are going to the primary tire, which is a more consistent tire. A lot of the ones that opted for the optional tire strictly for qualifying. So that's where we're at right now.
Thank you, Steve. Jack?
Well, Gary, the litany of frustration for Adrian Fernandez continues here at Mid-Ohio. What put you out?
Well, at the beginning, I have a black flag. I passed PJ on the start. It's I didn't really calculate exactly the timing of the line. And then we were running okay. We had the black flag, but we were making position. Then we have a few problems in our pit stop. And then at the end was a misfire that we couldn't find out at the end, and that was what put us out.
Adrian, this has been a season that I'm sure you and Tasman would love to forget. Nothing seems to go right for you this year.
Yeah, it's nobody has gave up. Everybody's doing their best effort, and we're trying to be as calm, as patient as we can. But it hasn't been easy. We've been trying to work with a lot of people, and they're doing their best effort. But it's not our year, so we just have to try to keep going and keep charging, and we'll see next year.
Thank you, Adrian.
There's a look at Jimmy Vasser, the reigning PPG Kart World Series champion, still looking for his first win in 1997. Currently in the number 14 spot. Sunlight right now over Mid-Ohio, but the clouds are there as well. With 34 laps complete, we'll be back with more of the Miller 200. Ride with Gilles de Ferran after that spin at the pit exit here at Mid-Ohio. He has been trying to work his way back up through the field. He is currently 13th with Al Unser Jr. just ahead in 12th.
And of course that happened with a yellow situation. Let's not forget he spun. There was a yellow pace car was going around. He did not lose a lap. Even by the time they turned him around, got him restarted, he got back out to the back of the pack.
And Al Unser Jr. has a problem.
He's going way too slow to enter the pits at that speed.
And flew it out the back. it appears that both Penske cars are now out of the race as Roger Penske still seeks his 100th win.
That's just throwing all the water right out there.
It appeared to happen very suddenly as well. De Ferran just flew by as Unser suddenly slowed.
Well, typical Al Jr. professional, knew he had a problem, pulled to the side, left the line there for Gilles de Ferran, and I believe Jimmy Vasser.
Now from Gilles de Ferran's in-car, that's Unser Jr. just ahead, and there it is.
And that's lucky for Gilles de Ferran that Al got over there to the left, that he didn't have to follow him, because that liquid would have gone down and possibly made him slide off onto the grass on the right.
You see the consistency of the fluid spray on the lens of the camera. Roger Penske there on the left in the white shirt. It's Al Unser Jr., victim of another DNF in 1997.
You think this place is physical? Look at little Al. He's been working.
His 7th DNF of the year. Up front, Alex Zanardi continues on his way, sun shining on the Italian atop the points and atop the leaderboard here at Mid-Ohio.
And Bob, Alex Zanardi is a little bit concerned about fuel consumption. At the present time, he is running in a fuel configuration where he can save some fuel. But he's being counseled by his crew chief and also the guy that calls the tactics, that would be team owner Chip Ganassi, that if Greg Moore should close and get to the rear decklet or to the rear wing, he should go to fuel position 4, burn more fuel. It's more important to stay out front than to get past and save some fuel.
Let's check Alex Zanardi's lead. There is Greg Moore in second, 4.2 seconds behind. About the length of the run up to the keyhole.
Let's also not forget one thing. Everybody stopped under the yellow except for Big Mo Gugelmin. And he stayed to the normal stage, so he's back in the pack, but he's got to only make one more stop, we think.
And Danny, you're absolutely correct. And let me tell you, everybody on pit road has not lost that fact either. They are very concerned. That's why a lot of them are trying to exercise a lot of fuel conservation. Gugelmin may be in the back of the pack right now, but through attrition and multiple pit stops on pit road, he could find himself back in the front. These guys have got to pit 3 instead of 2 times.
Mauricio Gugelmin currently 16th. Bobby Rahal picks up another spot, going around Scott Pruitt into 5th.
And what I saw there too was Scott was really breaking deep. He got smoke coming off the right front. He won't like that because it would have flat spotted that tire a little bit. I think what we're seeing here is that Bobby Rahal is on the harder compound, so as it goes longer in the run, he's able to have a better, more consistent car.
Working with his hands very close together on the wheel in the carousel. Gary Gerould in the pit lane.
Al Unser Jr. watching other cars go by. Al, have you ever had to work harder to gain positions? You got yourself up to the top 12 after a variety of problems, ultimately the engine.
Yeah, we think what happened was when I got up on Blundell there, you know, climbing up on top and coming down, we damaged one of the side pods. We really feel it, put a hole in the radiator right then, and all my water went away.
Blundell apparently had motor problems and lost power. There just wasn't room for you to do anything to take evasive action?
Yeah, no, I mean, I tried. You know, he quit running right as he crested over the hill, and I was trying to get underneath him. And I ended up climbing his left rear. You know, I almost made it because I didn't get my front wing at all, but, you know, there's about that much room between the tire being wider than the front wing. And I just climbed up on top of him, and, you know, I was very lucky to come out of it the way I did. And
tell me about the tire wear. And everybody trying to conserve tires, you were on the option for Goodyear. What kind of wear were you getting?
I was getting pretty good wear, actually. You know, we didn't, the tires were not going off near as bad as we thought they were going to, you know, but, you know, the Marlboro car was running real good, and we lost the water.
Thank you.
Gilles de Ferran leads Jimmy Vasser 12th and 13th here at the Miller 200 with 41 laps complete.
And Bob, one of those guys that's trying to get excellent fuel consumption is Gilles de Ferran. After that problem, the end of pit road, Derek Walker has calculated that de Ferran needs to get 2 miles to the gallon. That's the way they're doing their fuel mapping right now.
Right now, DeFerrin has the lead over Jimmy Vasser, 12th and 13th. Alex Zanardi leads the race. We'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC stations. Back at Mid-Ohio, you see Christian Fittipaldi's Swift Ford on Goodyear tires being hoisted over the tire wall. He came to a stop at the back corner of the racetrack. After climbing out of the car, he's receiving some assistance from the fans. Remember, he's working with that still healing right leg that was broken. You can see the crease in his pants from the brace that he still wears to drive. Climbed out of the car, walked over to the fence, handed his driving gloves to a young fan, making his day. Meanwhile, up front, Alex Zanardi having things all his way here at Mid-Ohio. He is the race leader and points leader. Second in points, Paul Tracy out of the race in contact on the opening lap. Third in points, Gilles DeFerrin spun in the pits. He runs well back in the pack in 11th as you look at Greg Moore in second place behind Zanardi. Fourth in points, Michael Andretti had contact in a spin on the first lap. So right now, Alex Zanardi in pretty good shape. Look at the gap back to third place, Dario Franchitti. Here he comes.
You look at that black stripe right there on the outside of the corner. That's all the rubber that they're laying down out there. You do not want to get a wheel off in that.
There is Bobby Rahal, who continues his march through the field, currently in fourth place, 23 seconds behind the leader. Let's check out who's at home watching young Dario Speedwagon. His mom, sister, brother, cousins, 2 grandmothers, and lots of friends representing Scotland, Spain, Italy, America. He's watching our coverage on Eurosport. Ben Edwards at the microphone. Many of Dario's old touring car buddies finish up their day of racing and gather in the hospitality area, he says, to watch the PPG Kart World Series action here in the United States. Already has a pole in his young kart career. Now he's looking for the top step of the podium. We expect more pit action shortly. Carl Hogan's team has just finished relocating their shops to his hometown of St. Louis, Missouri. Dario Franchitti gave him the pole at Toronto on the street circuit a few weeks back. Well, they couldn't seal the deal in the race. His best finish this year, 9th on the streets of Surfers Paradise, Australia, back in April. Notice the green car on the right of your screen. That's Michel Jourdain Jr. from Mexico. His best qualifying position in this race. And here's his march through the field. From 14th, he is up into 7th place. By far his best drive of the year.
And he was so excited after Friday that he had qualified high enough to be in the fast session for Saturday. He thought that was, and it is, a big accomplishment.
Sponsored by a big Mexican food company. They threw a big party here in the paddock this weekend. I understand the eating was fantastic. Dale Coyne says his young driver will be back with him next year to continue to develop the Peyton Coyne racing effort. Of course, the Peyton in Peyton Coyne is NFL legend Walter Payton, who is here this weekend as well. Right now, Jourdain is bottled up behind young Arndt Meyer, who was a lap down. Best finish ever for Michel Jourdain, 12th earlier this year at Portland, Oregon. Ride with Michael Andretti, 10th place. He too is one of those drivers in danger of slipping out of the championship fight. In the keyhole, big traffic. Andre Ribeiro now behind Meyer. Jourdain has gotten by.
That was a big help for Jourdain that Arndt Meyer did not let Ribeiro by. He just gave him that little cushion. Look at Walter Salas taking a look down the inside.
That's Salas in the white car. You're on board now with DeFerrin. It's Michael Andretti just ahead. Salas just ahead in the white car in front of Andretti. Now here comes Jimmy Vasser by.
He went right around the outside over that hill, right over Gilles DeFerrin.
DeFerrin dropping back to 12th.
This track is so critical when you run on slower cars. They can really determine the outcome of positions and the race over the years.
Franchitti in the Hogan pits. Down he comes, signaled back into the pit lane. Looks like scuffed slick tires going on. Well, he pitted from 3rd place. While the battle continues back in the pack. Michael Andretti to the right in the black Swift, just ahead of Jimmy Vasser, 10th and 11th. And Gilles de Ferran now back in 12th.
Oh, you saw Arndt Meyer right there in front, just chop Michael Andretti trying to slip up the inside. That's a tough place to pass anybody.
2 quick corners coming up here, taken as one, a pair of right-handers, and then hard on the gas just as you crest the brow. Mauricio Gugelmin had a big crash there in practice this weekend. Michael Andretti with Arndt Meyer just ahead. And you see how Michael feels.
Mike, pit this lap, pit this lap. Hearing telling you to pit this lap because they got him stuck behind there. They figure, okay, we're a lap or 2 into our window. Let's go ahead and make a stop, get him out of that traffic.
10.8-second pit stop for Scott Pruitt in the Brahma pits. Pruitt pitted from 4th on lap number 49. Horsepower plus through a sequential gearbox. Vasser under Meyer. De Ferran around the outside of Meyer. Running order is Alex Zanardi, Greg Moore, Bobby Rahal. Pit stops expected shortly. Meanwhile, Mauricio Gugelmin back in 13th, still on that 2-stop strategy as you ride with Alex Zanardi.
He's gradually pulled out about a 5-second cushion over Greg Moore.
Each lap in the lead by a member of the Target Chip Ganassi Racing team means a $25 contribution to the Target House at St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee.
You can see there on his hands the little white on the knuckles. That's a little patch, but see how it's starting to turn color and get darker? That's just from the sweat. That shows how hard he's working.
And Zanardi pits from the race lead on lap number 50. 60-mile-an-hour pit lane speed limit. Up comes the visor to get some cooling air into the helmet.
And now the key, Bob, is that the crew has to go to work. Zanardi hits the marks perfectly, so it's a minimum amount of time. Also another, looks like Greg Moore is in, Gary.
Yes, indeed. Routine service. Richie Hurt just got out as he came in.
And Zanardi's away in 12.6 seconds, Gary. He's the first of the front runners back out.
Oh, waiting for fuel. Waiting there they get it. That turned out to be a 17.9-second stop. That's not what the Players team wanted.
And Bobby Rahal comes sweeping past Alex Zanardi into the race lead. Zanardi on cold tires.
And with a full load of fuel, and he's just come out of the pits, Bobby Rahal would have had a run through turn 1 there, been carrying about 140 miles an hour out of that corner.
Gilles de Ferran is on pit road as you take a look from the overhead camera. They're going to try and clean out the radiators. And he is off and away. Now what they did is they took a view of their pit stop from an overhead camera to determine just exactly what they wanted to have done. They decided that they were going to try and change things because they needed to change and get into those radiator areas and pull out the debris.
Parker Johnstone also in and out of the pits as you watch Alex Zanardi trying to fatten his lead and his grip on the PPG Cup. Keep it in the Ganassi family. Jimmy Vasser won it last year. Race leader Bobby Rahal is in.
We're watching this crew. They gained 5 spots the last time. Fueling, taking look. Oh, he stalls, and this, they pound on the wall in frustration. Now refired. The exact opposite of what happened the first time. This time he may have lost spots.
At 60 miles an hour, Bobby Rahal heads for the pit out. When he hits the blend line, he'll be hard on the the throttle and bringing 900 horsepower to bear. We'll be back to Mid-Ohio. Back at Mid-Ohio, the battle continues for third. Dario Franchitti right there, followed closely by the red and white car of Mauricio Gugelmin. Our race summary after 54 laps. Alex Zanardi, the leader, clicking off laps at a green flag race average of 116 miles an hour. Cars out of the race: Christian Fittipaldi, Al Unser Jr., Adrian Fernandez, Brian Herta with an apparent punctured tire in the most spectacular fashion. Juan Fangio, the second among them as well. Incidentally, our sympathies go out to Dan Gurney and his wife Ivy on the death of Dan's father last Wednesday. Today's stories we're following: the championship stretch run. Alex Zanardi having things all his way. Second in points, Paul Tracy is out. Third in points, Gilles de Ferran back in 11th. Michael Andretti ninth. Greg Moore is in second place, the only real threat to Zanardi's points lead at this juncture. Tire wear really hasn't been much of a problem, with the exception of Brian Herta's exploded left rear. And track position, well, as ever at Mid-Ohio, it has been everything. The man we're going to be watching as regards track position is Mauricio Gugelmin, who is out of pit stop sequence with the rest of the field and currently runs fourth right there in the middle of your screen.
Yes, and we're going to have to wait until right at the end to see how this plays out, because there could be another yellow that could give the other guys an advantage, or is Big Mo's 2 stops really going to pay off?
Down to Gary Gerould in the pit lane.
Christian Fittipaldi with a long journey back. Was it gearbox related that put you out? What was the problem?
Yeah, something in the gearbox broke. I just lost drive in my car. That was it.
How was the tire wear on your good years? And again, you were on the softer, the option compound.
I was on the softer on the first stint. It wasn't perfect, but the car was hanging in there. At least I wasn't losing ground. And I knew that when I went for the second stint, things would have gone a lot better for me, as they did, because I was on a much harder tire. And the car was handling pretty good. I don't think we were on like to win the race today, but a good, solid top 3 finish for sure.
Christian, how are you feeling physically? The leg coming along as you hoped?
Yeah, the leg's coming along just fine. Like, I think, like, to be honest, I'm happier than ever. I think that I'm really competitive after everything that happened right in the beginning of the year. It's a shame that I'm just not finishing the races, but every race something happens. I hope that one day, like, things come my way.
Next week at Elkhart's, the next chance.
Christian indeed is not finishing races. His 4th DNF in 7 starts this year. Now here's a look at our pit graphic. Mauricio Gugelmin is right on his fuel window, out of sequence with the rest of the field. He pits for what may be the critical pit stop of this race.
Well, he actually looked like maybe he was a lap or 2 early on that pit window.
Well, Danny, actually, he is right where he wants to be. They feel that they will have enough to be able to go the distance now, but they wanted to inspect the rubber buildup on the front wing. They've done that. They send him away. 15.5, kind of a long pit stop. But remember, being out of sequence, he's going to have to climb that ladder once again.
And with 26 laps remaining, he surely has all the fuel on board that he needs. Correction, 28 laps remaining. Here's the view from our Honda Helicam. We'll take a break and return as Mauricio Gugelmin gets back up to speed. Stand by for more from the Miller 200. I'll correct myself again, 25 laps remaining. Take it to the bank. Back live at the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. Bob Barcia along with Danny Sullivan, Gary Gerould, and Jack Arute with you for the Miller 200, 13th round of the PPG Kart World Series for 1997. There you see the battle for third. Dario Franchitti, his best race of the year thus far. Scott Pruitt, though, just behind, barely a half second, perhaps less now, as Pruitt draws a bead on the young Scotch-Italian driver. Let's talk about our race leader, Alex Zanardi. More on that. Here's Jack Arute.
Bob Barcia, here's what Team Ganassi has devised as a strategy for the remainder of this race. They are going to try and go 32 laps on a 35-gallon tank of methanol. That means they do not intend to come back onto pit road for the remainder of this race. How are they going to do it? They're going to short shift. They've changed the fuel mapping on the car, trying to get that Honda engine to conserve as much fuel as possible. Chip Ganassi has made that call, Gary Gerould, and remains to be seen if this team can go 32 laps.
And Jack, we're hearing a lot of crews making the same call. Conserve, conserve, conserve. One team that doesn't have to make that decision, however, now is Gerald Davis's team. Walter Salas pulled to the side. He has electrical problems. They don't know. Obviously, he can't get back to the pits. Big disappointment after the youngster had been running solidly in the top 10.
Looking back from Dario Franchitti's car. Downshifting for the long right-hander at the carousel. Scott Pruitt closing up.
Bob Varsha, the frustration for Scott Pruitt and his Pat Patrick team is the fact that he is one of the drivers that feels he has to come in for at least a splash of methanol with about 7 laps to go. Currently in 4th position, but actually Pruitt knows he's going to have to come onto pit road one more time.
Scott Pruitt looking for his 2nd victory of the year after a big one on the streets of Surfers Paradise, Australia, that put him in the points lead briefly, but he has slipped back from that point. A couple of big crashes, including Gateway International Raceway at St. Louis, and then the Michigan Super Speedway in the US 500 2 weeks ago. Pruitt right now 6th in points, but with another win, he'd be right back in the hunt for the championship.
Desperately want to get by Arndt Meyer, but they're struggling to do so. He's running a very good race. He's not really holding him up. They want to pass him at the end of the straightaway, which is the safest spot, and they can't get by, which tells me that they've got that fuel mixture turned way down, trying to conserve fuel, consequently less horsepower. Here's one of the spots that they'd like to take a pass on him, but they're not close enough. So they'll try to close in here in this corner and take a run at the end of this next straightaway.
Franchitti draws up on Arndt Meyer. Meyer shown in 15th now, 1 lap down to the race leader. Franchitti delicately under braking for the uphill right-hander, and then a quick left. And now it is Scott Pruitt who must deal with a slightly slower car, not much slower.
And Dario Franchitti really, as a driver, enjoyed to see that, because Arndt Meyer is now going to give him a little bit of a cushion. Saw a little puff of smoke. That probably is where the car just bottoms when it comes down there and touches that bottom of the touches the road, gives a little puff of smoke. Pruitt did get by him. I think Arndt Meyer probably realized that they were racing for position, or his pit crew told him that they were racing for a position to go ahead and let him by.
Danny, let's update you on a change in strategy on pit road for the leader, Alex Zanardi. He was slowing down too much. So Chip Ganassi and his crew have decided, hey, let's go back. He asked Alex, can you go faster? He said yes. He says, good, then go like hell.
Time to go win the race. Still plenty of laps to go. We'll be back to Mid-Ohio after this message and a word from our ABC stations. Back at Mid-Ohio, pretty glum Walter Salas sits on the infield along with a massive crowd here at Mid-Ohio. His race has been run. There you see the hillsides absolutely packed with spectators. Now let's take a look from high overhead. If you wonder what a blimp turns into at Miller time, here it is. It's an airplane called the Miller Eagle, the most unusual eye in the sky on sports television. It's been giving us some great shots here today. This particular shot is the battle for 3rd place. Dario Franchitti at the bottom of your screen has it. Bright yellow machine of Scott Pruitt wants it. Plenty of marbles building up off the racing line.
And that tells you that they're throwing off a lot of rubber, so they are eating up those tires. Even though everybody says that the tire wear is not as bad as they expected, they're still throwing off a lot.
Beautiful part of Ohio here. Virtually dead center in the middle of the state. Lexington, Ohio. Not Kentucky, as I've been known to say in the past. Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall got married not far from this racetrack at one of the biggest social events of the year many, many years ago. On to the finish straightaway they come. Another terrific race from the young Scottish driver for Carl Hogan. Their pole at Toronto came to nothing when he collided with Bobby Rahal at the first turn of the first lap. And later, while carving through the field, dropped out.
Bob, here's another spin now on pit strategy from pit road involving one of the contenders, Greg Moore. Remember, you stated early, last 3 races they haven't been able to finish. They told us this weekend the time is stopped being conservative. We've got to gamble a bit. And right now, this crew is talking the fact that they think it's going to be very, very close, and say it's a high pucker factor, but they think they may be able to go without a splash and go. If that's the case, that's a new player to contend with here, because Zanardi looks like he's made his commitment now to use fuel and come in.
Oh, excuse me, Gary. Michel Jourdain's best race of the year has come to a stop on the grass. At least it appears to have. He skidded off. And now Scott Pruitt pits from 4th place. Jack Arute awaits him.
And Bob, Jim McGee made a call at the 11th hour to get it 1 additional lap, but Pruitt had already committed to pit road. The fueler will add the fuel. It is a time stop. Make sure they've got enough fuel to complete the distance. No tire change. He's tapped with a stick. He's off and away in 8.4 seconds. And guys, if Alex Zanardi can make a stop in 8.4 seconds, he could continue to lead this race because he's got an 18-second advantage over second place Greg Moore. Wait and see.
Well, of course, Jack, don't forget, that's the time spot from when he stops in the pits. He's still got to get in the pits, and you lose a lot more than 8 seconds coming down pit road and getting out.
But, Danny, the big question mark is, can Alex Zanardi do it in 10 seconds? If he does, then, boy, have we got a whale of a finish brewing here in the Miller 200.
And, Jack, the cheerleading from the crew to Greg Moore, they're telling him he's on a perfect pace, so they like what they're seeing in terms of fuel consumption. This could get real interesting.
And we have seen Greg Moore get great fuel mileage, not only at Milwaukee, but also at Detroit. Oh, and guess who that's going to help? All those guys that have not.
What we're talking about is a full course caution. Our second of the day. Waving from the finish line stand. What a break for Greg Moore and this man, Alex Zanardi. Zanardi immediately dives for the pit lane. Car pulls out ahead of him, Jack Arute.
Bob, we said in a pre-race show on ESPN2, the man who called the best tactical race would win. For Chip Ganassi, sometimes luck comes into play in terms of tactics. This yellow flag has given him the advantage. A 5.4-second stop, and Zanardi continues to lead.
Oh my, a 5.4-second splash and go with 12 laps remaining in the race. Alex Zanardi looking to complete the Ohio sweep. Both PPG Kart World Series events here in Ohio. Of course, that's Burke Lakefront Airport in Cleveland and here at Mid-Ohio. Michael Andretti did it in 1991. Emerson Fittipaldi in 92. Al Unser Jr. in 1994. And Alex Zanardi could do it this year. As you look at Greg Moore.
Bob Barsha, I think it's interesting here. There's been no indication from Greg Moore's crew that they want him on pit road. Everybody stayed on this side of pit wall. Franchitti comes in meanwhile. Tony Brunetti had just told him that he was on a perfect pace. The yellow helps them conserve fuel, so they may stay out for position.
Yes, but one problem they've got is that Zanardi put fuel in, so when they do go green, he can run 100% rich. Greg Moore might not be able to do that.
Dario Franchitti has taken fuel and tires, and the Hogan crew did it in 11.4 seconds. A great time. We'll be back to sort things out. Here at Mid-Ohio, we are ready for a restart. After a yellow flag, some of the teams topped up, others stayed on the racetrack. Alex Zanardi came in for a very quick splash and go. He is the race leader with 2 lapped cars between himself and the second place man, Greg Moore. We're back underway on lap 74, and even I know that means 9 laps remaining. Meyer and Parker Johnstone in the green and white car ahead of Greg Moore, who will be desperate to get past them.
I didn't understand that one while Parker was really trying to block Greg in that particular position there. He's definitely not racing him for a position.
Now just Arne Meyer remains between the race leader and Greg Moore.
Let's not forget that race leader, though, came in and has a lot of fuel on board, so he can turn it up and he'll be racing hard.
The order is Zanardi, Moore, Bobby Rahal in third, Raul Boesel in fourth, Jimmy Vasser fifth, Gilles de Ferran sixth, Dario Franchitti seventh after the pit stops, Scott Pruitt eighth, Mauricio Gugelmin ninth, and Michael Andretti 10th. Through turn one. Driving the Lola chassis, just quick enough to give Greg Moore problems, but there Moore slides underneath in the keyhole with an assist from Meyer, who got out of the way. Look at Alex Zanardi's average lap speed compared to Greg Moore, bottled up behind traffic. 2-mile-an-hour difference. Now Moore can turn it loose if he can in his effort to overtake Alex Zanardi. See young Greg, who earlier this year became the youngest driver to win PPG Kart World Series history. His father Rick is here this weekend, as always. Car getting light, squirrely a little bit as they get back on the power as soon as they dare. Eleven cars remain on the lead lap. 9 to go. Make that 8 to go as the leader crosses. There is the leader, Alex Zanardi. Last year he was the toughest man on the porch in the second half of the season. Looks like this year will be more the same for the young Italian.
Moore using every bit of the track there. He saw that bump of dust. He was right over on the left in the grass.
There is Franchitti with Mauricio Gugelmin just behind him going by Richie Hearn. There's the view from Franchitti's car back to Gugelmin.
This is what we often see here in Mid-Ohio at the end of the race. Everybody fighting for positions, all bunched up there. Very few places to pass. They usually have to force their way by to make something happen.
Behind these two, Michael Andretti has gotten around slower traffic. Back on the power, climbing the finish straightaway. Now 7 to go. Jay Jones just ahead of Dario Franchitti. Jones is a lapped car.
Dario driving that car for everything it's worth. Trying to make something happen and put a lap down on PJ.
Oh, Gugelmin makes his bid for position and drives right by Franchitti into 7th. Very opportunistic move from Gugelmin, the Brazilian with Formula One experience. His 4th start in this race. And he's able to draw away a little bit from Franchitti. Now 6 to go as Zanardi has already crossed the timing stripe. On board with Franchitti. Zanardi's car. Look at all of that open track. Checking the interval. There is Greg Moore. Over the last 5 laps, here's the way the interval has expanded or contracted. Most of that down to traffic.
And I believe that Zanardi's probably running his engine a little bit richer than Greg Moore, who had been trying to make something happen, stretching his fuel load. Zanardi, of course, came in, topped it up, and now he's able to run that with more fuel.
5 laps to go for Alex Zanardi. Same situation he was in Cleveland. He had fuel he needed at the end to run as hard as he could make the car go.
And of course, we saw in that shot right there, there's Greg Moore in the light blue car, but right behind him is Bobby Rahal, and that is for a position.
Bobby Rahal started the day 16th. He is now in 3rd and closing on Greg Moore.
And we just checked with the Greg Moore camp once again, and they're conceding now they don't think they can run down Zanardi. So, Danny, you were spot on. Zanardi running real strong. It's not really a conservative mode for Moore, but he's trying to get points, something he hasn't had in the last 3 races. But he's got his hands full, obviously, with Rahal.
Well, that's right, Gary. He better not be too conservative right now. He's got the Mid-Ohio Master right behind him, and he's got a good amount of fuel on board as well.
And now comes word to Moore. They're telling him you don't have to lift. They think they're going to be okay on fuel, so maybe he'll be able to hold off that challenge a little more effectively.
The gap has come down once again, however, as Bobby Rahal tries to run down Greg Moore. And if the crowd had anything to do with it, you could be sure that Bobby would just blow right by Moore.
Of course, there's 2 things that have to happen. He has to catch him first, and then he's got to be able to find a way around him. And in the closing stages of a race, drivers tend to get very wide cars.
Bobby Rahal using a little bit more of the track than happens to be paved. Look at that gap to Zanardi, 6.1 seconds. So many dramatic finishes this year. Perhaps none better than Detroit, when both of the Pac West cars for Mauricio Gugelmin and Mark Blundell ran out of fuel on the last lap, while each of them was leading the race.
And Bobby Rahal, of course, had a heartbreaker in Rio.
That's right, leading with a lap to go. Paul Tracy inherited that one of Tracy's 3 wins this year. Tracy, the first man out of today's race. And Alex Zanardi threatens to take over the seasonal lead in wins with his 4th. 3 laps to go.
Not only are Greg Moore and Bobby Rahal fighting for a position, but they're also right up against their fuel window, trying to make it stretch those 3 laps. So they're trying to race and be conservative.
Look at those numbers at the upper left. Moore 2 miles an hour faster than Alex Zanardi on that last lap.
Would that be too little too late?
Whoops, he's still trying hard, however.
Well, when they told him to go, that he had enough fuel, that he didn't have to lift, I'm sure he decided to have a go. Using all the road there, throwing up some dust.
Finding a little more distance, he can push that throttle. This morning, those of us here at Mid-Ohio were watching coverage of the Formula One World Championship, a victory for Jacques Villeneuve in Hungary. The producer for Canadian coverage of the PPG Kart World Series said, oh, just the first Canadian victory of the day. 2 laps to go. Does Greg Moore have it in him as Alex Zanardi flies over the horizon?
Well, the same problem that Bobby would face, even if Greg Moore catches him, he still has to find a way around him.
There is the gap. Greg Moore turning his fastest laps of the day. Rahal in the distance. Oh, Dario Franchitti in for a splash of fuel.
Dario just can't get a result. He's been so close and leading, and always something little seems to take him out of a good finish.
Boy, these points today will be like oxygen to Greg Moore, who has scored none in his last 3 races after that terrific run at midseason. Victory on the mile at Milwaukee and the street course at Belle Isle in Detroit. White flag from the flag stand. Jim Swinthal now waves it over Greg Moore, but Alex Zanardi is out front with 2 1/4 miles to go to his 4th checkered flag of the season. And an even fatter lead in the points. Greg Moore came into the weekend 5th in the championship. Paul Tracy, second to Alex Zanardi, is out. Gilles de Ferran, who came in 3rd, runs back in 6th place. So Alex Zanardi is in a perfect position right now. But he still has about 1.5 miles to go. And the victory will be worth a $5,000 donation to the Target House Fund at St. Jude's Children's Hospital. Hiro Matsushita very slow on the racetrack. Perhaps out of fuel. Just a couple of quarters remaining for Alex Zanardi as the young Italian goes for his 7th career victory, his 4th of the season, and his 3rd in the last 4 races. He now has it. Back-to-back wins at Mid-Ohio. Greg Moore crosses the line in 2nd. And now let's go back to the battle for 5th. Zanardi's teammate Jimmy Vasser with Gilles de Ferran just behind. And behind de Ferran is Mauricio Gugelmin. Across the line they come. We'll be back, though, to meet our winner, Alex Zanardi, looking more and more like a champion. We'll be back to Mid-Ohio.
Alex Zanardi had trouble finding the temporary victory lane, so he's come to the end of pit road. The car's come to a stop. He's going to be taking his helmet off. Alex Zanardi, 27-point bulge over Paul Tracy in the chase for the championship. But tell us about that last stop. You radioed back. Congratulations to your crew.
Absolutely. We had the speed since I did the first race with the Target Chip Ganassi Racing. I think I had the speed to win races. But today was a team effort, and today is actually I wouldn't say the first time, but today definitely the team worked like a championship team. So I'm very happy. We gain a level. If we can keep up there with the kind of quality of work we've been doing today, I'm sure nobody can beat us.
Are you talking about communication or performance? Can you narrow it down what you think the difference is now?
Effort. 150% from Chip Ganassi, which is the boss of the team, to the guy that sweeps the workshop on Sunday night when everybody is supposed to come back. So that was an effort race. That was, with all the ingredients in this world, we wanted very badly, and we didn't lose our focus, so I have to congratulate to this man. Did a great job today. I think we all did.
Talking about Chip Ganassi, now Alex Zanardi says that it was a team effort. Is this the team to beat for the rest of the season, Chip?
I don't know, Jack. There's a lot of season left, but I'll tell you what, he certainly proved he's the driver to beat.
Let's ask Alex. Alex, are you saying that this will be the team to beat?
If the team keeps working as we did today, it will be the team to beat for long.
Gary, there's a lot of people that don't want to hear that.
Wow, I know. Well, here's a smile coming back to the face of Greg Moore. And what does it feel like to get some momentum back in a championship battle that looked like it was sliding away?
It's unbelievable. I mean, Alex has got a fairly significant lead over all of us now, but we had 3 really bad races there, and I got to apologize for not talking to everybody after Michigan. It was just one of those things where the emotions were just too high, and it's nice to get the ball rolling again. Everyone on my team's worked so hard in the last 3. Didn't get any finishes, but to get second here, I'm pretty pleased with it.
You had to conserve some fuel, and then there was that late yellow. You elected with your crew to stay out. Did you hope, obviously, that you were going to be able to get some track position and maybe be in front of Zanardi despite his splash?
Yeah, that's what we were hoping, is that we would have enough. He would stay in the pits just quite long enough to make sure that he had enough fuel. But at the very end there, we didn't have, because we stayed out, we didn't have enough fuel, so we had to sort of back off on the straightaways again. But I think if we had enough fuel, we would have been able to give him a good run.
Gives you some great momentum going to Elkhart next week.
Sure does.
Greg Moore is a happy crew, Bob.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Don't forget, coming up next, round 4, the International Race of Champions from Michigan. Be sure to stand by for that. We'll be back in a moment.
Welcome back to Mid-Ohio, where David Letterman, the car owner, is congratulating his co-owner and driver, Bobby Rahal. And Bobby, you maybe said it best just before we went on the air here. There's still a lot of life in the old man, huh?
Oh yeah, I mean, you give me the car and we'll run up front, and the crew gave me a good car. I made changes in the stop, and and the change was better, going fast at the end, but we tried to stretch our fuel the whole part of the race, and I think if it had stayed green, those 2 in front of me would have been in trouble, but we had enough to make it to the end, and as it is, it was a good run, and David wore red. We thought that might get us into victory lane, but at least we're in on the podium. So.
Now, David Letterman, I heard Ray Hall ask you to go to Elkhart Lake. What's the verdict? You going to be there?
Not me so much. It's the wardrobe. But the thing I like about Bobby, he and I are nearly the same age, except that he's gotten smarter as he's gotten older. And for me, it's just a thrill to come out here and see him run down the kids. It's just great. Bob?
All right, thanks very much, gentlemen. Here's a look at the final results of today's race. First repeat victory for Alex Zanardi in his career of just a couple of dozen races. Greg Moore, good strong second place. Bobby Rahal, his best finish since the Vancouver Street Race last year, where he finished second. Michael Andretti comes home in the number 8 spot. There you see the rest of the finishers through the top 18. For Jimmy Vasser, his best finish since the Milwaukee race earlier this year. Last year it was a 1-2 for the Ganassi team. This year a 1-5. Still good results for the hottest team on the tour right now. Charles Neerberg, back in the series, did not start the race. Championship standings after 13 events. Alex Zanardi with that 27-point lead over Paul Tracy as we head for Road America next week. Danny, your final thoughts?
Well, I think a lot of teams are going to have to go home and do some soul searching and some homework. If they're going to catch Zanardi, they've got to turn the wick up here and get a little bit more effort into it and find a better balanced car.
Next week it'll be Road America on ESPN. Until then, I'm Bob Varsha for Danny Sullivan, Gary Gerould, and Jack Arud. Congratulations to Alex Zanardi. Back-to-back wins at Mid-Ohio. We'll see you next week at Road America in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. Until then, so long from the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course in Lexington, Ohio.